What is up, y'all? Takedown Talk is back, and today we are looking at the Kizer T1. You may be thinking to yourself, that's a random knife to come back on. Well, you know what? This budget blade has really impressed me. The action is insane. The build quality is great, and we are going to dive in, take this thing apart, and find out exactly why it is so awesome. But yeah, I've just been carrying it a lot and I've been really impressed with it, so I thought, you know what, we're going to mod it a bit, which I've already dyed the scales. But we're going to do a little bit more to the scales, and yeah, guys, I hope you enjoy it. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. Okay guys, the Kizer T1. This is the micarta handled version. The original design of the T1 was titanium with S35VN, I believe. The design is by Uli Hinneke, if I'm pronouncing that right. And I first got kind of introduced to this knife on Cedric and Ada Gear and Outdoors channel. He had the titanium one and sang its praises a lot. And when this became available as a micarta option, I knew I wanted to get one, and I ultimately did when Kizer did their 10-year anniversary sale. I can't remember how many years it was that they were celebrating, but they had some crazy deals. I got this knife for $40, 40 bucks, 154 CM steel, a lovely micarta handle, and yeah, super lightweight, super fidgetable. The action on this guy is nuts. It reminds me of the Ontario Rat 1 action where you just barely touch that thumb stud and out it comes. Now on this one we are pivoting on bronze. We are pivoting on, good grief, can I get this sentence out? We are pivoting on bearings. Wow, not the bronze washers that the Ontario Rat 1 uses. So, you know, different type of action, but still super nice. Look at that, just drop shut, man. Very nice. So, let's get in here, let's take this thing apart, guys, and let's find out exactly what makes it tick. And then we are going to do a little bit of work on the handles, not much, nothing too crazy. So I'm thinking I'm going to need my T8 for this. And in case y'all don't know, my tools are a, who makes this? Klein, yeah, Klein Tools driver, and the bits and stuff are from, oh, actually, wow. Oh, that's a T15. Hang on a minute. The bits and stuff are from iFixit, I think? It's been so long now. Wow, I can't hardly remember. All right, let's get this pivot out of here. That thing was hard to get out. A lot of Loctite on that bad boy. But yeah, anyway, I just couldn't be more stoked. All right, let's see, are these T8 as well? Yeah, body screws are also T8. Great, I love it when that happens. Usually that's a Civivi thing. I don't normally see Kizer do that, but hey man, that's great. Don't have to change the drivers out. Always love that. That's gonna be hard to get to. We're gonna need to do the clip first. So let's switch to our T6. All right. But yeah, this guy's just really impressed me for the money. I think it's a fantastic knife. And, you know, Uli Hinneke is a celebrated designer. Let's put the clip there. Let's put our pivot screw up here and our two body screws right here. All right. And here we go. There's our first side. You can see here are the bearings. Just your regular old caged bearings. Nothing too crazy going on here. But it works. I'll put our blade here for now. Let's get that pivot out, put it over here, and put those bearings there. Let me see if we can fully disassemble this bad boy. Whoop, what was that there? Oh, that was our stop pin. I'm always real loosey-goosey with the stop pins. There's our stop pin. That goes right up here. Let's put it, yeah, we'll put it over here by these body screws. All right, let's see if I can get these screws out, and I think they might come out, yeah. So we got one. There we go. So what I did actually with these scales, they originally came in kind of an OD green color, which I believe you would have seen in the glamour footage. But I wanted to try to replicate an ivory linen color, which I ultimately was not successful at. So I dyed them. I used kind of a daffodil yellow and dyed them, and that didn't work out. So then I dyed them black, because black was like my second plan. And then I sanded away some of the black here, and I really like the way it looks. It has this weathered look, but I want more of that. So what we're gonna do when I get this thing fully disassembled, we're gonna really go at it with the 60 grit. No, not 60. We'll go with like, I'll let you know what grit we go with. But we're gonna see what I can pull out there. So, all right, there's our liner for this side. We'll put our scale here. Here is the backspacer. We're gonna acid and stone wash this backspacer. I don't like how shiny it is. Same thing for the pocket clip. So let's push these little receivers out. Let's see, come on now. There we go. We'll put the receivers over here with the body screws, or whatever you want to call them. I've always called these receivers, but y'all tell me what you think is a better terminology for these. Come on, there we go. Another one. Another one. All right, here's the backspacer. And this liner should come on out, I think. Come on, baby. Oh, you're gonna give me a hard time, huh? There we go. Here's our locking leaf and our scale. There we go, it's fully disassembled. Oh wait, we gotta pop out that guy. There we go. Now it is fully disassembled. I was debating on changing out that thumb stud. I'm not 100% sure yet. We might change out the thumb stud. I gotta think on that. But anyway, guys, here's our exploded view of the Kizer T1. So just to go through our parts list here, we have our 154 cm blade, 2 micarta scales. Very nice micarta, by the way. Not super textury, but just enough. 2 liners, stainless steel, super skeletonized, very lightweight. Our stainless steel backspacer, let's see, our 2 receivers for the backspacer, 4 body screws, a stop pin, which oddly enough actually is, appears, it's a hollow. That's odd. Looks like they were repurposing a part. As long as it works, 2 caged bearing systems, 2 caged bearings, pivot, and our pivot screw, and our pocket clip there. So, now that we are fully disassembled, let's get these scales to the garage. I'm going to sand them, and we're going to see what we can pull out of these bad boys. So since performing this process of dyeing dark and then sanding back to a lighter color, I've actually become a really big fan of doing this in general, and I've applied it to a few other knives, and I do recommend it. I think it's a really cool look. It's it just gives you a little bit more depth, maybe a little bit more dimension in the visual sort of aesthetic of the knife. And also the 220 grit makes the micarta, at least in the case of this Kizer, made the micarta feel really nice. So yeah, big fan of this whole process. So up next, we are going to acid wash the pocket clip and the backspacer, and this is my extremely scientific setup that I use here. I've got ferric chloride in a mixture that is 1 part ferric, 1 part water, and I have that inside of a plastic container, inside of a plastic bucket. So in case there's any spillover, you know, it's more or less safe. And I use a old coat hanger as a hook, and then just drop my parts right into the mix, and that's pretty much it.
5 minutes later.
So now that the parts are nice and dark, I'm going to just dip them into a mixture of water and baking soda, which acts as a neutralizer, and then from there we go straight into the stone washing bucket, which is just handheld. Again, I don't do anything too fancy here, but you know, it's fun DIY stuff that gets the job done. So here's where I mess up. So I had the bright idea to swap out the thumb studs on this knife for some kind of funky blue thumb studs that I got for a Benchmade that I ended up not using. And I went ahead, removed the thumb studs from the Kizer, and the Benchmade studs did not quite fit. They were a little too big, and so I needed to widen the hole for the studs in the blade. And I've done this before, so I thought I'd go put it in my drill press without checking to make sure that the chuck was tightened. And lo and behold, the bit and the chuck all get stuck inside the hole in the blade. And at this point, as it had been working through, or as it had been widening the hole, it actually ruined the heat treat around that section of the blade. Now, just where you can see the discoloration is the section that the temper's been kind of thrown off. It doesn't actually reach down to the edge or anything, so that's good. But now I've got this big ugly spot all the way around the thumb stud area. So the only solution to take care of that I could think of was to go ahead and acid wash the blade as well and stone wash it. And that should hide at least this kind of an imperfection. It hides a lot of imperfections, but this one stupid mistake will be well hidden by the stone wash. So now I'm masking the contact surfaces on the blade. I just use a Sharpie for this. I've found that it works just fine, and it's a lot easier than dealing with something like nail polish. But contact surfaces include the area where your washers or your bearings interact, as well as the lock face, and also where the stop pin meets the tang of the blade, if you want to call it the tang. But also too, if it's like a Spyderco or something like that, I'll make a point to try to run the Sharpie around the inside of the Spidey hole sometimes, depending on whether or not I want it to be shiny in there. And I also do the same thing for the pivot hole.
Five minutes later.
Wow, whoa, that was fun. So I know I've probably already said this in the dub, but just to give you all a quick recap, what happened there was I had a specific thumb stud I wanted to use with this knife, and it wouldn't fit in the hole for the thumb stud, so it was only a little bit too wide. So I was like, you know what, I'll just put it in the drill press and I'll widen the hole. I severely underestimated the crappiness of my bits, and I don't know if y'all could tell from the video, but the bit bound up. And when I took the drill press off, I had to try to get it out and it snapped off, and then I had to use a punch to hammer it out, which fortunately that worked. But then it left a pretty noticeable, I can't think of the word, basically where it ruined the temper up here by the stud, which isn't a huge issue. It doesn't affect the edge of the blade. That's really all you want to worry about. However, if I went hammering up here, yeah, it'd probably do some damage because the temper is now off around the studs. So how do you hide that? Well, only way to do that is acid and stonewash. That's really it. So I did try to do a creative thing with some oil that I've tried before to get kind of this splatter effect, but it didn't work this time. So I elected to just, you know what, we'll just do a good old-fashioned stonewash. After all that, though, man, that's going to look dope. Holy cow. So talk about finding a lemon patch and then making some lemons, God help me. That's where we're at. Making some lemonade. Whew, I got to squeezing all right. Okay. All right, guys, let's get this thing back together. Good grief. I'm going to be happy when we emerge from this quagmire that we have found ourselves in. By the way, I realized the stop pin is basically just the same as the receivers, so that's kind of funny. Let's get the stop pin in place. There we go. Let's go ahead and pop the receivers into the backspace. We'll take a closer look at how that turned out. That looks great. Turned out nice. And the clip, as well. Those turned out great. So let's get these little receivers into place here. Oh my God, guys, that looks actually really cool. I think it actually looks cooler than if I had not stonewashed it. If I had left that blade just satin, I don't think it would look as cool as it looks right now. Another body. Oh, and first, before we put in that body screw, let's go ahead and get the pivot in place just so it is there. Stop pin appears to be good and seated. Got our pivot in place. I love the look of just clean satin studs against a black wash blade. God, that looks good, guys. Holy crap, this is turning out so much better than how I felt it was going to turn out an hour ago. Oh, my Lord. Good grief, guys. Look how this thing turned out, man. Whew, from the ashes of the fire. Good gosh. That looks dope. That looks so good. Oh, man. There's a little bit of flex there. I don't know if that's worth taking out. And, of course, once I give this a few opens and closes, it'll... what am I trying to say? The bearings will kind of wear through the finish that's now on the blade, and it'll get much nicer. That looks so good, guys. The handles are the highlight for me, honestly, but I really think they complement that stonewash finish that's all over the... Oh, man. Whew. Whew-wee. That was a crucible. So at this point, I had decided that this was going to be kind of a Morrowind-themed knife. And one way to really add to the theme or the aesthetic of a knife is to create a custom lanyard for it. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm taking this wooden bead that I've had for years and not have known what to do with it. I'm going to use the Dremel to kind of give it a rock texture, which is very easy to do. Just random kind of cuts and dips with the Dremel, and you come away with something that looks kind of custom. And ultimately what I'm going for here is something that has a stony appearance. And then going to dye it, which I made a mixture of colors, but really the end result is black. Once we're done with the dye, I'm going to take a piece of 220 grit and just kind of hit the high spots with it to give it a little bit more of a contrasty kind of look. We've got some nice lighter colored high spots and then the dark black deeper spots. And then after that is all done, I'm going to seal the whole thing with thin set glue. In this case, I'm just using crazy glue, but it's great thin set glue for this kind of thing. And it ultimately, to get that stony kind of shiny appearance, I ended up having to do about 3 coats on it. The last thing to do, of course, is to make the lanyard itself. Typically, I like to use paracord. That's usually my favorite lanyard material just because it's so strong and resilient and more or less easy to work with. But for this, again, coming back to the, y'all are probably tired of hearing me say aesthetic, but coming back to that, I felt like leather was a better fit. So I have this sort of shoestring leather. It's really tough stuff, really good for lanyards. And I'm making a hangman's knot and then making barrel sort of loops around the knot. So ultimately it's going to have 3 little loops, or I guess 3 little barrel loops above the bead, and then coming out of the bead it's just going to have a short straight section of what amounts to 4 pieces of leather. Now getting that bead on these 4 pieces of leather was a little bit harder than I had expected, so this did take a little bit, but I am, again, really pleased with the result. And brought out the Primo to chop off the unused ends here, the Primo K-tip. But awesome lanyard, really stoked how it turned out, and yeah, it looks really good. So that is the lanyard for the Ashlander mod. Closing thoughts on the Kizer T1 from Uli Henneke, the Ashlander mod. Really pleased with how the mod turned out. I think that the handle scales look really nice now that they've been dyed and sanded back at 220 grit. I just think it looks fantastic. Also, really stoked how this lanyard came out. Definitely one of my favorite lanyards that I've designed, in addition to my spellcaster lanyards, but this one is really unique and I'm really stoked on it. Definitely captures that feeling of kind of otherworldliness that Morrowind is known for, which Morrowind is the game that inspired this mod ultimately. And a lot of the stylization and decor in that game is just very unique and very, as I said, very otherworldly. But getting into the functions and features of the T1, this is one of my favorite Kizers. I think I've always wanted one for a long time, and originally they were produced in titanium in a frame lock, and the more affordable version here in micarta and 154 cm, I think that's the version to get. I just think it's a very attractive design and it's really well priced. This one I got for $40. I'm not sure what they're going for now, but I'll drop it in here in text with whatever the current price is, whether they're available or not. But yeah, so as I said, the micarta, of course, is really nice. That's one thing about Kizer, is their micarta is just, let's get a closer look at it. It's just exceptional. Aside from what I did to it, it was already really nice out of the box. And it has a wonderful texture to it, a wonderful pattern. And it's really interesting to me that it is, at least in my experience, it is quite a bit better than what Civivi brings for their micarta. Their micarta has always felt kind of cheap to me, and Kizer's feels really excellent. I've had very expensive knives that have had micarta that Kizer's felt just as good. So yeah, big win on the handle. It's a very neutral handle, but I think that that's to its benefit. As I said, or maybe I didn't say this already, but I do think this is kind of one of those knives that could be the perfect EDC knife. The handle's very neutral. It'll fit into pretty much anybody's hand nicely, I think. The really only defined spot we have here is this groove here for the lock bar access. But other than that, you've got this one little bump here and everything else is nice and straight, and it just feels really excellent. There's also some faceting going on right here, but again, everything's just kind of straightforward and neutral. Pocket clip is a fold-over deep carry clip. Nothing too exciting there, just your standard steel pocket clip. I would like to maybe one day replace this with a milled clip. I don't know if Kizer produces aftermarket milled clips like Civivi does, but I may be able to find something that fits it. But for now, it's fine. I do like the lanyard attachment point, if you want to call it that. The backspacer really is what it is. But I like how the attachment point's just kind of built into the backspacer. Nothing crazy there, but I just think it looks good. I don't know, it's simple, but it looks good. And the lock bar access is fine too. The only thing that I think I would change about the handle would be to maybe have a bit more access on this side, because due to the detent strength, which is very strong, I cannot middle finger flick this knife for the life of me. I just end up hurting my middle finger. So I really can only just use the thumb there. The good thing is though, the deployment is so good that I do not care about that. I do not mind that I can only use my thumb, because the deployment is excellent. It almost feels like it's assisted. It feels really good. Usually I'm not a fan of a hard detent. I like kind of more of a medium detent where I have the option to slow roll, which with this you kind of can, but you really have to position your thumb in an unusual way to get past that detent without firing it out. It's made to fire. But in this case, I think that hard detent is just so awesome and so well done that I'm willing to roll with it, even though I typically like softer detents than that. So I guess we'll kind of follow the deployment along here to continue on with that. So yeah, deployment out of when firing is awesome. When closing, it's really great too. You hit that lock bar and it just free falls. Very nice, very smooth. The one negative there is that there is quite a bit of, I guess what some people call pivot lash. The blade is not quite like perfectly fit on the pivot, so there is a bit of shake there, and it sounds a bit rattly sometimes. But lockup itself is rock solid. There's no play in any direction. It's just dead on. So I'm willing to look past that. Now ideally, yeah, it would be a little more dialed in around the pivot. Something that I tend to compare this knife to is the TRM Atom, which is almost unfair because they're completely different price brackets, completely different manufacturing processes. The TRM, of course, is completely American made. Kizer's Chinese made. The TRM is $200 and the Kizer is, usually I think you can find these for $40 fairly easily if you keep an eye out for sales. So you can't really knock it that bad because it's an excellent, excellent deal. Blade steel, as I mentioned earlier, 154 cm. It's looking really good in this stone wash, and that was kind of such a happy accident, you know, that I had screwed up the heat treat up here at the spine, and it's like, well, now I have no choice but to stone wash it, and I'm really glad I did. I think it just looks really excellent, and again, really nails that Morrowind Ashlander aesthetic. If you're not familiar, you hear me throw these things around. You know, typically I name my mods after either games or art or novels, just anything in those three fields that kind of inspires me. Morrowind is kind of a combination of all three of those things. It's a video game that is incredibly artistic, and one of the developers described it as the best novel he's ever written, and I agree, it's really excellent. But to give you a quick summation, the Ashlanders are a group of people that live out in these wastelands, these sort of desert wastelands. And I mean, if you look at this, to me, this looks like something that, you know, came out of a wasteland, potentially. Really pleased with it. So let's talk a little bit more about that blade shape. It is, again, we come back to the kind of perfect EDC style. This blade shape has it. You've got a nice flat here, little tiny recurve, not enough to even really worry about, I don't think, but nice flat, bit of belly, and then a nice drop point. So it's a really well-balanced, all-rounder sort of blade shape. Slices cardboard, great. No problems there. Food prep is good too, but it is a bit short for like serious food prep. So I probably wouldn't consider this my food prep knife, but it'll definitely do it in a pinch. The stock thickness is really nice. It's kind of this perfect stock thickness for EDC. It's going to be able to take on pretty much any task you throw up against it, and it's also going to be able to slice. Now, is it going to slice as good as your TRM Atom? Absolutely not. And it also is a flat grind. It's not a hollow grind, so don't expect, you know, those crazy hollow grind style slices. But again, we're talking EDC here, and I think that this is kind of your perfect all-rounder. Anything I would change, I actually, and I've talked about this before, but I prefer washer-based actions, and I think that this is a style of knife that would benefit from having a washer-based action. It's just so, I don't know, it's just such a nice knife. And it could be one of those ones that I could imagine really enjoying the slow roll on. But instead they opted for bearings, which I understand. I think more people prefer bearings than they do washers. And of course you get this nice pop action here. But also an Ontario Rat 2, Rat 1 will give you that same immediate pop. So, and they're washer based, so it's not, you know, it could be done. And they have done it actually with the Hunter that Walsh very enthusiastically supports, and he gave me one and I really enjoy it too. So I know they can do it, but we have bearings here and that's fine. Let's see, anything else we want to touch on? I think that covers everything I wanted to talk about. I am just really pleased with this knife for what you pay for it, and much of Kizer's lineup is that way. Very impressive for the money. If you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. I'll be happy to answer them. And I try to remember to answer. If you've asked me a question in the past and I didn't answer you, I apologize. You know, I don't do this full time. This is just something that me and Walsh do for fun. So I'm not always the best at answering comments, so I apologize if I've missed you. But do ask, please do ask. And if it's something that I will answer, I absolutely will do my best to give you the information you're looking for. But yeah, guys, that has been the Kizer T1 designed by Uli Henneke, the Ashlander mod. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I've been Enzo. This has been Knox Knife Mods. And we will see you guys next time.